Gabby Petito, the 22-year-old woman who went missing while on a Wyoming trip with her fiancé and then was tragically found dead, has been a TV news obsession.
And we have a big development in the case of that missing New York woman, Gabby Petito.
The growing search for missing 22-year-old Gabby Petito, who disappeared after a cross-country road trip with her fiancé.
The manhunt for Brian Laundrie ramping up after Gabby Petito's death is ruled a homicide.
This case has really riveted the country. Lots of coverage, lots of interest, right?
We've talked a lot about it here on MSNBC, and that is, it's a lot of pretty white women.
The way this story has captivated the nation has many wondering, why not the same media attention when people of color go missing? Well, the answer actually has a name: missing white woman syndrome.
Joining us now from Dallas, Steve Krakauer, a cable news veteran who publishes the Fourth Watch newsletter. All right, Steve, make the case. Why should cable news and a lot of other outlets be fixated on this one case involving a missing young woman who was found murdered, as tragic as it is?
Yeah, I think that on one level, this is cable news sort of being the effect where the cause it was this trending story that was happening long before it ever, Gabby Petito ever got mentioned on cable news. So you have hundreds of millions of mentions of Gabby Petito on TikTok and other places. There's a lot of interest already, happening on social media, and then it kind of translates and then it goes on cable news and becomes this national story. Although I have to say, I also question the timing a little bit because there's lots. This is a tragic story, and there are lots of tragic stories. I don't know if all of those tragic stories are national news stories. So just around the time that the Biden administration is going through perhaps the toughest time of the last 9 months, with the massive crisis in Del Rio, with the Haitian migrants that you talked about earlier, with this, they admitted to just only about 10 days ago the failed mistaken drone strike that killed 10 and 7 children. Right around that time, those stories take a back seat to the latest missing white influencer.
Are you suggesting that somehow this is deliberate to distract from Joe Biden's political woes, or that we need some kind of other thing because it's depressing to focus on COVID in Afghanistan and Haitian migrants?
I think there's a convenience to it. I think every day there's a calculus made in a newsroom about what stories are the most important of the day, and it's very easy. I think that if say there were a different president, the calculus of where Gabby Petito falls in the rundown would be a lot different, I think, than when Joe Biden's president. But I also think there is this pushback, and you heard it as this missing white woman syndrome. I think there's actually some validity to that because you do see these stories certainly bubble up when you've got they've got the video of Gabby Petito and her boyfriend on YouTube, and you've got the body cam footage, and it is often these white stories. But at the same time, you've got Chris Cuomo at the magic wall last week, breaking down, like it looks like he's breaking down Iowa caucus results when he's talking about Gabby Petito's text messages, and then suddenly you get this pushback, and then instead of looking inward and having some self-reflection and introspection about why are we covering these stories so much, it's turned the other way, and there's this sort of interest shaming of the audience. Well, why are you so interested in this instead of the latest?
Yeah, I mean, there's a circular logic to it. But when you say, it's hot on TikTok and then it makes the jump to cable news, I mean, then cable news draws more attention, then law enforcement gets more interested, and that in itself drives more coverage. And everyone knows there's a certain demographic that really likes these stories, and it is all about ratings, is it not?
It's a lot about ratings. This story makes a lot of sense on a show that I love, like Dateline, rather than, say, the Today Show or, say, the NBC Nightly News. I think there's a place for stories like this, absolutely. But where, if I was programming a cable news channel, this would not be bubbling up as the most important national news story that's happening in the world. And to your point, ratings, I think, play a big factor here.
Okay, well, let me just jump in on the missing white woman business, because the Washington Post has a story, and there have been others, about of all of the women of color who have gone missing or been murdered and how they don't get national attention. Leads off with a black mother and 3 in Georgia has been missing since March. Her family can't get any national attention. This strikes many people as kind of a form of racial pandering.
Yes, and I would also say I think that it's shifted because it's not just missing white women. It's white women involved in crimes, I think, is the larger point here. And I do think we've seen a shift in that. There was a reason that George Floyd's trial was such a big media moment last year, and I think that with good reason. That is also a very important case that was happening. And before it was the Jodi Ariases and the Casey Anthonys. Yeah. But yes, absolutely. I think that we've seen
going back to Natalie Holloway in 2005, which when I started writing about it. All right, we got to go, but I think there's a real backlash here over this, and it's a good debate. Good debate, Steve Krakauer, still to come.